It might dim on you. You get 2 batteries.
What's up? 95. 95. Alright. What's up, bro?
Stop scrolling right now. You need to hear this story because what happened next will shock you to your core. Before we go any further, I want to know, where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? Type it in the comments. And while you do that, make sure to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who loves true crime. And subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of our shocking stories. This is a story about betrayal, deception, and a darkness hidden behind the uniform of someone sworn to protect. A United States Marine Corps veteran, a Baltimore police officer, and a father who would do the unthinkable. On the morning of July 7th, in Millersville, Maryland, police officers arrived at a suburban home after receiving a report from a woman named Latrice. She was worried about her 15-year-old son, Dasson, who appeared to be missing. At first glance, this seemed like a routine case. A teenager gone missing, maybe angry, maybe sneaking out. But as the officers would soon discover, the ordinary can hide the unimaginable. Moments after arriving, the officers knocked on the front door. Loud bangs echoed from upstairs, but no one answered. Minutes passed. Then Eric Banks, a man who would soon become the center of a chilling investigation, finally appeared. He seemed out of breath, anxious but not alarmed. His words were casual, almost careless. "He ran out, DJ? Where's DJ? He's not here." His tone was measured, controlled, yet every word would soon betray him. The officers began questioning him. They asked about the boy's whereabouts, about his bags, about the family dynamics. Eric explained that he had spoken to Dasson the night before, that he understood the situation, and that the boy had been packing his belongings in preparation to leave with his mother, as the court had ordered. Yet there was something strange. Eric was not Dasson's biological father, and Latrice had custodial rights. Dasson's disappearance on the very day he was supposed to move out was suspicious. Eric's explanation seemed rehearsed, almost too convenient. 2 younger children, Evan, age 5, and Tristan, age 3, sat quietly nearby, unbeknownst to the officers. These children would soon hold the key to uncovering a horrifying truth. After speaking with neighbors and running basic checks, the officers returned to confront Eric again. His demeanor was calm, cooperative even, but his words began to weave a story that would raise more questions than they answered. He spoke of a heart-to-heart with Dasson about emotions, family separations, and choices. "He's 15. He knows where he doesn't want to be," Eric explained. "I love him. I care for him, but I can't change him." The officers listened. They were trained to spot lies, to read between the lines. And though they had no direct evidence yet, they felt a creeping unease. Something about Eric did not sit right. Still, the officers pursued their work diligently. They canvassed the area, made calls, and attempted to reach Latrice. Nothing, no sign of Dasson, no clarity. It was then that one simple request would change everything. The officers asked Eric if they could search the home. Perhaps Dasson was hiding inside. Eric agreed, a seemingly innocuous consent. Yet, within minutes, what lay behind closed doors would shatter every expectation. They started the search calmly, moving through the rooms of the home. They checked each bedroom, each space where a child might hide. The younger children remained close to their father, innocent and unaware of the growing horror. As the search reached the 3rd floor, a floor used for storage, the air seemed to grow heavier. The officers' instincts, trained over years of service, began to tell them that something was not right. And then, a hole in the bedroom wall. The sort of place one might never think to look, tucked away, hidden. And inside, the officers discovered the unimaginable. Jason's body, cold, lifeless, a young boy who should have had his entire life ahead of him, trapped in a space no child should ever be in. Eric had failed to close the hole properly, leaving the evidence exposed. Shock rippled through the officers. Professional training kicked in, but even the most seasoned could not prepare for this. They transported Eric to a patrol vehicle, attempting to maintain composure. Their minds raced, trying to process the scene they had just uncovered. But Eric, experienced in both the military and police work, attempted one last desperate act. Chaos erupted as he tried to exploit his knowledge of procedure to resist restraint. Handcuffs, double locks, verbal commands, none of it deterred him. He struggled violently, almost managing to disarm an officer. It was a scene straight out of a nightmare, with the officers struggling not only to contain him but to maintain their own safety. Finally, calm returned, though the tension remained thick. Emergency responders attempted life-saving measures on Dasson, but it was too late. He was gone. And yet, the story was only beginning, because within the walls of that home, behind closed doors, and in the minds of those left behind, a darkness lingered. Secrets, hidden for years, began to surface. The investigation had just scratched the surface, and the truth would soon reveal a horror that went beyond imagination. As the sun climbed higher over Millersville, the reality of what had happened inside that home began to sink in. Eric Banks, once a respected Marine and Baltimore police officer, was now sitting quietly in a patrol vehicle, his calm exterior a mask that hid a chilling truth. Officers had begun the painstaking process of separating everyone involved. The children, Evan and Tristan, were taken to a safe interview room. Latrice, the boy's mother, was escorted to another, and Eric was left alone, an island of controlled fury and silent calculation. The detectives knew that time was crucial. Every minute that passed could erode evidence, alter memories, or worse, allow deception to take root. They begin with Latrice, trying to piece together a picture of Dasson's final hours. She was always careful, the narrator explains. Meticulous, caring, a mother who would do anything to protect her children. And yet, despite her vigilance, she could not prevent the nightmare that had unfolded. Latrice's words painted a portrait of a sweet, obedient boy, the kind of child who never caused trouble, the kind who smiled easily and loved to help others. Her heartbreak was palpable, seeping into the room as detectives pressed for details. Meanwhile, in the safety room, Evan, only 5 years old, was gently encouraged to speak. Miwa, a trained forensic interviewer, guided the boy with care, ensuring he felt safe, understood, and unthreatened. The tension in the room was almost unbearable, but the officers knew they had to coax the story out. Who was at home that day? Miwa asked softly. Mom, Daddy, DJ. Evan replied quietly, his voice trembling. Can you tell me what happened next? Evan paused, unsure, eyes darting toward the corner, the kind of pause that makes an adult's stomach tighten. And then slowly he began to describe the staircase. The same staircase Eric had dragged his son up. Every word, every hesitant phrase, was a thread leading investigators deeper into a chilling truth. And as Evan drew, the image became horrifyingly clear. His small hand sketched the steps, the landing, the space where Jason had been hidden. He was too young to understand death fully, yet he had witnessed its shadow that day. Back at the station, detectives watched closely. Latrice's testimony, combined with the child's perspective, began to create a mosaic of terror. A pattern was emerging, one that left little doubt. Dasson had not run away. Something far darker had taken place. Eric sat silently in the interrogation room, eyes calm, yet calculating. Detectives could feel it. The tension between them was almost tangible, a silent battle of wills. Every question they asked, every pause in the conversation, was a test. And Eric, trained in both the military and law enforcement, was no ordinary suspect. The air in the room thickened as detectives began to press harder. Where were you when Dasson disappeared? What happened in the bedroom upstairs? Each question was a hammer striking against Eric's composed facade. And then a breakthrough. A neighbor's statement confirmed an unusual pattern. Sounds of movement, footsteps, even a faint thud had been reported around the time Dasson vanished. Combined with Evans's drawings and Latrice's account, the picture was becoming impossible to ignore. But the most chilling detail came from the children themselves. Tristan, too young to speak in full sentences, would later reveal fragments, small observations, details of hidden doors, strange noises, shadows moving in the attic, pieces of a puzzle that no one wanted to see. Detectives began to connect the dots. Eric's story was unraveling thread by thread. His alibi, the carefully rehearsed tale of a heart-to-heart with Dawson, began to collapse under the weight of evidence. Every pause, every hesitation, every small contradiction added to the growing tension in the room. The narrative of a loving father, a disciplined officer, was dissolving. In its place, a darker truth emerged. Man who had not only failed to protect his child but had orchestrated an unthinkable act behind closed doors. And then, as investigators prepared to take the next step, to confront Eric with the mounting evidence, the tension reached a near breaking point. The audience watching this unfold could almost feel the weight of every silent second in that room. The fear, the disbelief, and the horror waiting just beyond the door. Because what was about to be uncovered was more than just a tragedy. It was a revelation that would leave everyone questioning how well they really knew the people closest to them. The officers had already felt the weight of dread pressing down as they reached the upper floor of the house. Every creak of the floorboards, every faint whisper of movement sent shivers down their spines. They knew something was there, something hiding in plain sight. Eric Banks, a man trained to face danger in combat and in the streets of Baltimore, was now facing a situation he could not control. His calm, measured exterior was beginning to crack. He knew the walls around him held secrets, secrets that could destroy everything he had built. The detectives and officers methodically moved through the house. The younger children were safely away, their small eyes spared from the grim truth, while every adult in the room felt a silent, unspoken dread. The air was thick. Each step brought them closer to a revelation that no one could have imagined. And then, the hole, a small concealed cavity in Eric's bedroom wall just behind the furniture. At first it seemed almost innocuous, but as they shined their flashlights, the officers realized the horrifying truth. Inside, cold and lifeless, was Jason. His young body, the weight of innocence stolen, was hidden in a space no child should ever endure. Eric had failed to fully close the cavity, leaving the evidence exposed like a trap waiting to be sprung. The room went silent. Even the seasoned officers, trained for decades in dealing with crime scenes, could not immediately process what they were seeing. Shock, disbelief, and horror collided in an almost unbearable wave. Eric's reaction was subtle at first. A slight tightening of his jaw, a careful, calculated glance. But as the reality of discovery sank in, his composure began to fracture. Attempts to restrain him turned chaotic. He struggled, using his knowledge of police procedure to manipulate handcuffs, testing the officer's limits. Every second of resistance added tension to an already unbearable scene. Shouts echoed through the hallway. Commands were given, but Eric's experience allowed him to push boundaries, almost to the point of danger. He lunged, he twisted, he fought against the very people trained to protect him. "Stay in the car. Stay put." An officer barked, voice trembling just slightly. "I just want to kiss my boys," Eric pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. His words were jarring, a mixture of human emotion and sinister misdirection. The officers were caught between maintaining control and containing the immediate threat. Each second felt stretched like hours. Every heartbeat amplified the terror of the moment. Finally, after a struggle that seemed to defy reality, Eric was restrained. EMS and additional units arrived. Life-saving measures were performed on Jason, but the grim truth could not be avoided. He was gone, even as the chaos settled. The gravity of the situation continued to weigh heavily. Investigators began documenting every detail, photographing every angle, and carefully noting Eric's reactions. Every nuance, every tremor, every pause told a story of guilt and desperation. But even with the body discovered, the mystery had layers yet to unfold. The children's testimonies, Latrice's observations, and Eric's own words began to weave a horrifying tapestry of secrets and lies, hinting at deeper darkness within the home. Every officer in that house, every detective at the station, knew one thing: nothing about this was ordinary. This was not a case of a runaway child or a simple family dispute. This was a chilling descent into the unimaginable, where one man's duplicity and brutality had left a permanent scar on everyone involved. And as Eric was finally escorted to the patrol vehicle, the reality of the crime began to sink in for everyone present. The silence of the neighborhood, once ordinary and quiet, was now overshadowed by horror. Behind closed doors, evil had been hidden, and for those who had uncovered it, there was no turning back. The sun had climbed higher, yet the shadows inside the home felt darker than ever. Outside, the neighborhood carried on, unaware that inside one house innocence had been stolen, and evil had quietly lingered for far too long. EMS teams worked frantically, their faces taut with urgency. Every second counted. Yet even the most skilled paramedics could feel the weight of hopelessness. They attempted CPR on Jason, trying to reverse what was already done. Their hands moved with precision, every motion deliberate. But the truth could not be ignored. "He's gone," one paramedic finally whispered, the words barely audible over the sirens. At the police station, the atmosphere was suffocating. Latrice sat, grief etched across her face, hands trembling. Every moment of anticipation, every fear she had buried, now erupted like a dam breaking. She was a mother losing a child in a way that no one should ever experience. Detectives began interviewing her in detail, trying to piece together Jason's last hours, the events leading up to the unimaginable discovery. Her voice shook, but her words painted a portrait of a sweet, caring boy, a child who deserved safety, love, and protection. "He was always helping," she said softly. "Always kind. He never caused trouble. My baby, my baby." Meanwhile, Evan, still only 5 years old, was guided once more by Miwa, the trained forensic interviewer. The boy's small hands trembled as he recounted what he had seen that day. Every detail, every observation, was a chilling piece of the puzzle. The detectives noted how even the smallest clues mattered. A misplaced toy, a shadowy corner, a door left ajar. These tiny fragments formed a horrifying narrative, confirming what no one wanted to believe. And then came the autopsy report. Words that shattered what remained of hope: cause of death, asphyxiation. The bruises, the marks, evidence of deliberate, calculated violence. A life ended by a man entrusted to protect it. The tension in the room was palpable. Every officer, every detective, felt it, a crushing weight of despair and disbelief. How could someone trained to serve and protect commit such an atrocity? But even as the horror unfolded, professionals had to continue their work. Evidence was meticulously collected: photographs of the scene, forensic samples, Eric's fingerprints on objects surrounding the crime. Each piece corroborated the unimaginable reality that Jason had been intentionally harmed. Latrice's grief was punctuated by moments of stark clarity. She observed small details from the home, hidden doors, the children's small observations, and pieced together the timeline herself. Every revelation confirmed a growing suspicion. Eric was no longer just a suspect. He was the architect of this tragedy. Meanwhile, at the station, Eric's composure had vanished entirely. Alone in the interrogation room, his trained calm dissolved into tension, desperation, and subtle fear. Detectives pushed carefully, aware that any misstep could provoke a dangerous reaction. "We know what happened," one detective said, voice steady. "We have statements, drawings, evidence, and your actions are on record. It's time to tell us the truth." Eric's eyes flickered. Every heartbeat echoed like a drum, each second stretching into eternity. The room seemed smaller, the walls closing in, as the net of evidence tightened around him. Outside, the world continued, unaware of the depths of horror hidden behind closed doors. Inside, every movement, every word, every pause added to the suffocating tension. Investigators knew the story was far from over. More revelations would come from the children, from forensic evidence, and from the man who had caused such devastation. Because in every great tragedy, the details matter. Every whisper, every gesture, every hidden moment of fear adds to the narrative. And for those watching, the dread was almost tangible, a reminder that evil can hide behind even the most ordinary masks, waiting for the moment it will be revealed. The interrogation room was silent except for the steady hum of the overhead lights. Eric Banks sat alone, the weight of the evidence pressing on him like an invisible force. Every photograph, every statement, every drawing from the children was a thread in a web he could no longer escape. Detectives approached carefully. Each step echoed a deliberate reminder that control had shifted. The calm facade that Eric had worn for hours, even days, had cracked. His fingers fidgeted, his eyes darted, searching for an escape that no longer existed. Eric, one detective said firmly, voice steady but unyielding, "We have everything we need. It is time to be honest. Tell us exactly what happened." For a moment there was silence, a moment so heavy it seemed to stretch into eternity. Then fragments of his carefully constructed story began to unravel. Hesitation, evasions, subtle contradictions, each one a crack in the mask he had worn so carefully. Even as the investigation concluded, the psychological ramifications remained. How could a parent, a protector, commit such an act? How could a trained officer hide the evidence behind a facade of normalcy? These questions haunted everyone involved, the investigators, the family, and the community. And for the audience watching this unfold, the story leaves a chilling reminder. Appearances can deceive, and sometimes evil hides behind the most trusted faces. As the case closed, Eric Banks faced justice. The children, though scarred, began to rebuild, supported by loved ones and professionals. Latrice grieved but also found strength in the truth being revealed. Before we end, I want to ask you, where are you watching from right now? And what time is it? Drop it in the comments. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that reveal the dark truths hiding in plain sight. Because stories like these are not just tales, they are warnings, lessons, and reminders that vigilance, awareness, and truth are the only shields we have against hidden horrors. Like, share, and subscribe for more interesting true crime